How many years now has this Liberal government been in power? And what's it done in all those years about the disgusting and unlawful bias of the ABC, which we pay $1 billion a year to actually be unbiased? What's it done? Well, basically nothing. And now it seems probably too late to even try, because the polls show that Labor will win the election, form government before the end of May, unless Scott Morrison gets another miracle. But now, at the very last moment, after all these years, suddenly there's an inquiry into how the ABC usually gives people the two fingers. If you dare complain about its bias or its fake news, send in a complaint. The ABC investigates itself, says it's all okay, you were wrong, off you go. A Liberal Senator Andrew Bragg was promoted a couple of months ago by the government to head the Senate's Communications Committee. And it was reported to do something about the ABC that the Communications Minister won't. Too delicate for that kind of work. And so last week, Senator Bragg called an inquiry into how badly the ABC handled complaints against it. And Ita Buttrose, the ABC chairman, she hit the roof, saying the ABC was already holding its own inquiry into exactly this, because that's the ABC way with all complaints. Get its own hand-picked people to investigate itself and give it a clean bill of health. Anyway, Ita Buttrose claims that a Senate inquiry into how the ABC handles complaints is an attack against its independence.
What we have here really is a partisan political exercise under the guise of using a Senate Legislation Committee for government senators to undermine the ABC's independence. Or does he believe that politicians should be able to meddle in and dictate to the national broadcaster about content? Because that's where this is leading.
But the Prime Minister today backed Andrew Bragg against the ABC.
Yes, they have their independence, and no one's questioning that, but they're not above the scrutiny for how they conduct themselves using taxpayers' money from any other government agency. I mean, that's sort of business as usual for the Australian Parliament. I don't know why they would consider themselves an exception to business as usual.
Joining me is a former chairman of the ABC, Maurice Newman. Maurice, it's great to see you again. Ita Buttrose says getting the Senate to look into how the ABC handles complaints about its bias, its fake news, etc., that is interfering with its independence. It wants its own handpicked people to do this inquiry instead. Does she have a point?
Good evening, Andrew. No, she doesn't. I think what's expected is that we the taxpayers outlay $3 billion and more over a triennium for the ABC to do whatever it wishes, and it shouldn't be held to account. It's this latest trend these days where the sinners become suddenly the victim. And I just find it quite extraordinary. But of course, if you're trying to maintain the integrity of your staff collective, then it seems to me that this is a way you'd go about it, because you want to keep any criticism away and then make out that you're being badly done by. I mean, there's been so much evidence over the last, several years, 10 years, even when I was there, to show that the programs which the ABC produce are lacking in integrity when it comes to content, when it comes to fact, when it comes to even accepting when they are wrong, that they need to apologise. And this is where we are at today. I am probably at the more extreme end of people who are critical of the ABC. I have to question, in today's world where media is so ubiquitous, whether it be entertainment, whether it be news and current affairs, whatever the genre that interests you is, where is the ABC so distinctive?
Look, very good question. But when it comes to the government now doing something about it, I mean, it's had little nibbles here and there, you know, like a freeze on increased funding for a little while, that kind of stuff. But a review like this, isn't it all too late and too little for the Liberals to be now trying to hold the ABC to account for all this fake news and bias just before an election which the polls suggest it's going to lose?
I agree with you. They've had something like 9 years to do something. They have done nothing. There's been a little bit, as you say, fiddling at the edges, but nothing substantive. They're not being held to account to the Charter, to the Act, to their editorial policies. They just behave as they wish. We've seen Louise Milligan, who ran that terrible campaign against Cardinal Pell. We saw what happened with Christian Porter. We've seen what happened with the minister who was accused
Andrew
of
Laming.
Andrew Laming of upskirting. Altogether, that's over $1 million worth of money that has gone to fund the court cases or the defence. And I think the last I saw, the ABC spent something in the last 4 years over $26 million on legal costs.
Yeah, well, look, the persecution of the innocent Cardinal Pell, the innocent Andrew Laming, and Christian Porter, all these three things is one thing. I would add to that the wall-to-wall bias on global warming, the sinking island story that will never drown. It's just ludicrous. Global warming, race relations, reconciliation, all that kind of stuff. The Ita Buttrose still seems to be in denial about this bias. And look, I'll give you another example, and I want you to comment on this. The ABC has promoted that fake news that President Donald Trump had colluded with Russia to steal the 2016 US election and was perhaps being blackmailed after paying Russian prostitutes to do disgusting things. Now, the ABC even ran a 3-part series on this claim of 4 corners, a claim that it said came in part from a dossier put together by a former spy, Christopher Steele. Have a listen to this.
Tonight, we begin our special 3-part investigation into the story of the century, the election of US President Donald Trump and his ties to Russia. Next week, secrets, spies and useful idiots. In mid-2016, Steele's sources had provided shocking answers to the question about Trump's links to Russia.
What his sources were telling him was that essentially there was a conspiracy.
Maurice Newman, it now turns out there was no collusion. That Steele dossier was funded by Trump's opponent in the Democrat Party, and special investigators now had 3 men charged with lying about where they got this alleged stuff, some of which seems to have come from the Democrats and not from Russia. Should the ABC now apologise and correct the record?
Well, of course, but it would never stop apologising for all of these sorts of factual errors. And it had an unhealthy obsession, which was totally against anything that Donald Trump did. We saw this with the Wuhan laboratory, the same sort of thing where when Sherry Markson produced the book, first of all, and the extraordinary program, it was ridiculed on the ABC. Now, of course, they're beginning to understand that perhaps she was much better informed than they were, but there will be no apology. There is no apology. Never apologise, never explain.
Yeah, and the other thing about that too, of course, Maurice Newman, is that when they run a line, it seems to be a monolithic line. There's no debate. Like George Pell, not a single ABC reporter managed to say before the High Court decision that George Pell was probably innocent. Not a single one, which I find extraordinary. Maurice Newman, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.